Next, we're going to learn more about empathic listening. We have a tendency to rush in with answers and solutions when we communicate with others. Sometimes this is appropriate. However, if we use autobiographical responses when empathy is needed, we stop the flow of effective communication. As a result, we can entirely miss the real issue. Let's review the definition of empathic listening. Empathic listening is reflecting what a person feels and says in your own words. It is not listening to advise, counsel, reply, refute, solve, fix, change, judge, agree, disagree, question, analyze, or figure out. Empathic listening is both an attitude and a skill. If we get really good at the skill, but don't sincerely want to understand, then the skill will feel manipulative, and it will backfire on us. The traditional Chinese character you are about to see helps to illustrate the attitude we should hold when we listen empathically. When we listen empathically, we do it with our ears, our eyes, and heart. We listen for understanding, caring about what the other person is saying and feeling. The word heart also contains the word for ear and art. Over time, this attitude and this skill becomes an art. To practice the habit of mutual communication, when should we know that empathic listening is called for? What are signals that tell us it's time to listen empathically? Can you think of any? As this chart shows, nonverbal signals like body language or voice tone can communicate more than words can. A simple change in tone of voice can change the entire meaning of a message. Let me give you an example of what I mean. I didn't say you had an attitude problem. I didn't say you had an attitude problem. I didn't say you had an attitude problem. Now, do you think that one sentence can be interpreted in many different ways? Focusing on your vocal tone is a very important piece of good communication. What signals, other than words, do people use to communicate their meaning? What feelings might these signals communicate? If I fold my arms while we're having a conversation, you might interpret that as defensiveness. Of course, I could just be cold. How about if in an argument or a discussion I raise my voice? You can interpret that as anger. How about if I use silence? Could you interpret that as resentment? How about pauses? Some might interpret that as a lack of confidence on my part. Think for a minute, how well does email translate your feelings? Have you ever misread the meaning of an email because you couldn't see or hear the other person sending the message? Same goes for text messages. Nonverbal signals are your best indicators of when to listen empathically and when not to. So what are some signals you should be watching for as you're getting ready to engage in a conversation? If you're engaged in a conversation in which the individuals are in a low trust relationship, it's important to stop and make sure that you're listening empathically. Other times that it's important to slow down and make sure that you are paying attention is when you're engaged in a conversation in which, number one, you don't feel like you're being understood, or number two, the other person feels like they're not being understood. Any conversation that results in high emotion should be a watch out, where you should be making sure that you're stepping back and listening empathically to what the other person has to say. If you begin to notice any high emotion coming out of a conversation, it's time to slow down. Just watch and be ready to listen empathically should you need to. If you're engaged in a casual conversation in which you have been given the clear go-ahead to give your opinions, and there's no high stress, high emotion, or high investment subjects being talked about, go forward and seek to be understood.